This show is brought to you by Safety FM. This is Safety Justice League.
But how do you not mention the fact that you've seen people on Facebook going outside with coffee filters over?
Oh my god! And then safety people are getting all at each other about I've just seen more arguments on social media, and I'm like, you guys, I think if you step back, sometimes you see you're saying the same damn thing. People don't read the whole post, they don't watch the whole video. It's like.
Nobody has time for that.
Yeah.
Well, they do that to you all the time, Abby. It's they obviously don't even read your post. They just
they're like, I don't like Frozen.
Cool, buddy. Or another thing I see too, and I think I may have mentioned this before, is people actual safety people or other science kind of type people posting things, and there's no link for reference. They post a screenshot, and it's why don't you just give us the link? What are you doing?
Nobody has time for that.
I think we're so in this world of uncertainty and unknown, and it's pointing out the fact that a lot of people in our field have no freaking clue what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the
That's
scary
really
part, it is, but the scariest part about it to me is that we're going to go back to the world at some point and try to make it normal again. And I guarantee it's just going to be more doubling down into the same old. Without really learning the overall lesson about humanity that we needed to learn here, and which is we're not as good and awesome and big and bad as we thought we are. Maybe we have more to learn. Maybe we can do better. Because we weren't prepared for this.
I have a suspicion that a lot of the posts that you see are motivated by people who don't want to change the way that they've always done things. And that's a lot of the resistance is, they just, for example, there are some really bad supervisors out there who just want to have their people coming in and sitting and warming a chair. That's kind of an old school way of doing things. You can't show up even a minute late. You must be on time. You must leave on time. Any extra work you do outside of those hours, they don't count for anything. You just have to be there between this block of time in order for you to be counted as adding value. And these micromanaging assholes don't want to let go for any reason at all. I mean, I was having arguments with people saying, well, what's the risk of coming into the open office? What the hell is wrong with you?
I don't know. Maybe that's where it lives.
Yeah.
What about just this is exposing people? It just exposes people that don't know anything.
For sure.
It exposes people that want to collaborate. It exposes managers that really don't have anything to stand on besides the fact that their people are in their seats, for 40 hours a week or whatever it is.
Here's the amazing phenomenon to me, and this is just something that I've noticed, not just from my own viewpoint. I've heard it from a lot of people, but the degree to which safety people are not being consulted about decisions being made is pretty telling. I mean, it
is. And maybe it's not the person, but it's the person that was in the position before them. I don't know about you guys, but I've been at companies where I'm paying for what the last person did.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is that societally, our perception of what safety does is so far off. I mean, we're watching on the news now where people they're just learning the term PPE. So, the fact that there's this contingent or cohort of us that are out there on the fringes that have done this work for however many years, and nobody really knew about us, or if they did, it was, those were the guys that just do the OSHA stuff. I think there's just a gross misunderstanding and therefore an undervaluation of who and what we are and what we're capable of and what we should be contributing to an organization.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I always talk about marketing and safety. It's important to get yourself out there as a resource to employees, and marketing is just communicating. Communicating is hard. And I was, for a while, I was invited to these training sessions by an HR person for new managers. And it was essentially just to orient them to kind of what's what from a safety standpoint. And one of the things I would ask them was, who here knows your safety, because the way that the company was set up was the safety supervisors had regions. And so I wanted to know from people from all different regions, which ones actually knew who their safety representative was, their safety rep. And I'm telling you, nobody knew at all. There wasn't a single time. And I did several of these classes. Each class had maybe 25, 30 people in it. Nobody ever could tell me who their safety rep was. And that tells me that those safety people are not doing their jobs. How could these people, how could nobody know who their safety rep was? What are they doing? Yeah.
I think one of the big reasons that a lot of companies aren't reaching out to their safety people is because they're looking at this as a business decision versus a health decision. And when you're looking at something from a business decision, you don't necessarily always involve safety in that, even though you should, because we have some ramification in that as well. But I think that a lot of companies are looking at this as a bottom line dollar issue more than they're looking at it as a health issue. So why get safety involved? Just as long as safety makes sure that they do what we're telling them to make sure the people are doing, then we've done our part. We've checked that safety box.
Well, it comes down to the whole mask debate too. I mean, that's something that's been hot on everybody's talking list or, talking items. And, nobody really knows the right answer. Nobody knows if a cloth mask is going to be better than no mask, or if you can reuse an N95 as long as you sanitize it. I mean, this is all just new territory that nobody really has definitive answers on. And with the guidance changing, even at the levels of the CDC and the World Health Organization, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of pandemonium. And I think you're seeing both sides of the coin right now. You're seeing really terrible decisions being made, and you're seeing some really fabulous decisions being made. And I think that's really highlighting leadership. And I think that's going to take us into this kind of new era of business, like you're talking about, Jason, where that people will start, the ones that get it are going to see the value of finding a good safety professional that actually knows their stuff, and B, tapping into them for more than just Band-Aids and ice packs, because I think that's what we've been viewed as for so long. And it's going to be a long, hard road to get out of that stigma, out of that perspective. But I think it's something that we need to work on, for the next big thing that comes up after this.
I think Jason Lucas was exactly right, that companies are looking at the decisions they're making right now and looking at them as business decisions. And it's so sad that they're not including health and safety professionals in those business decisions, because I'm sure there's plenty of safety people that are at like director and even VP level that are likely finding themselves kind of left out of the room in a lot of this. And whether it's their own doing or the company just has no clue what to do with them. Even just taking into consideration this whole mask thing, like what a great thing for a safety person to do the research on and come up with what the guidance should be. We're the ones that navigate in the world of OSHA and NIOSH and CDC and understand where to find these resources. And the mask thing, I mean, it's changing daily, hourly even, and even on the weekend. So that's a tough one, but I still think it's a job for a safety person. And what we have to live with or deal with now going forward is, why weren't we at the table, and what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah. And it's not only that, but we've talked about what is a safety pro before. And part of the problem is there are people in high ranking safety positions who are not safety professionals. They're operations people who don't have.
Or they're really terrible safety people.
Yeah, exactly. They're not what I would call a safety pro. It really comes down to principles. And I've always thought that it wouldn't be that hard to train somebody to be a good safety manager, because you can start by building them up on principles. And that's where you always have to start, is with your first principles. And then you apply it's always the lens of principles where you start. And once you have that foundation, those solid principles in place, then you look to see, okay, what are my practical options here? But when you have people in place that are lacking those principles, that's when you run into problems. And Jason's right. There are some people who have been safety for a long time. They're just terrible at it. And then you have other people who think that they are safety professionals simply because they've never had an injury. They think that qualifies them somehow. So when safety isn't brought to the table, sometimes they are brought to the table, but it's one of those types of people that really have no business being in that role in the first place.
Well, I think that. Well, let me rephrase that. I know for myself in the past that was my barometer. That was my standard. Did we have injuries? That determined on how good of a job I was doing in safety, and I didn't know any better. In the industry that I was in, that was how you counted yourself as a good safety person. Not just the injuries, but how did you manage the case if you happen to have an injury? And that determined how successful you were as a safety person, not realizing that there's a whole different realm to safety than just that. The idea of being able to research things, to be an asset to a company, to be an asset to executives, to help answer these questions, be they OSHA related, CDC related, NIOSH related. So I think people don't know what they don't know. And if you've been raised up as a safety professional that's what matters, because that's what your company is saying matters, then you can be deceived pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we start, the vast majority, whether you start in college or you start in the field and sort of earn your stripes the hard way, we start with regulation and compliance, and injuries, injury counts. And that's sort of the foundation that our industry, our career has sort of set as the normal. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's where you need to start. You need to know those things, and you need to know where to find those things. But to say that safety can only be good if you're compliant is, it's a big stretch. And I've heard it said at really high levels in organizations. But it really takes away from the human aspect, which is something that we've always tried to drive toward. And I think if there's anybody listening that's new in their career, reach out to people that understand how people work, and the regulation knowledge and all that is good, but there's so much more, so much deeper than that.
Yeah, exactly. You have to know people and avoid the church of counting things. What ends up happening is, from an executive lens, you get this perspective that everything has to be counted and measured, and it's all outcome based and that kind of thing. But the problem is if you certain things that you count have these pitfalls associated with them. So, like for example, if you just count your performance based on the number of recordables, then you make it difficult for people to report, or you make it painful for people to report, or you make it costly for people to report, then guess what? They're not going to report. And then you're going to see, the numbers going down. You're going to be satisfied with that. And then you're going to see your incident rates coming down. And then you're going to start having more fatalities. Because why is that? Because these injuries that are now not being reported, those are being caused by hazards in the workplace. And because they're not being reported, those hazards aren't being removed. And in many cases, there's not much difference. A serious hazard can either maim you, it can miss you, or it could kill you. So if somebody gets hurt because they got lucky and it could have been much worse, but they're afraid to report it because they don't want to get in trouble, well, guess what? Now the next person's going to be exposed to that hazard, and maybe it'll kill the next guy. And that's why we see in these countries where the incident rate's going down, and you see their fatality rates going up. I think that's why. I think it's because they're putting so much emphasis, and people are afraid to report. So these hazards are remaining in the work sites, and they're starting to they just reach up and bite people.
That all makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to bring up real quick too that a lot of organizations may not be ready for the reporting as it would be a best case scenario to get the information that you need. So you can do the incident investigations. You can actually remove the hazards so that we're not having these what seem to be freak, really intense incidents or fatalities, that we would see the steps that are leading up to it. But I think a problem is that some organizations just aren't there yet. And there may be great safety professionals or, mediocre safety professionals in place that instead of trying to work within the culture that they have at their company to try to improve things or try to move the needle, they're just throwing up their hands frustrated. So I think right now, if you're still employed as a safety professional, and if your organization isn't quite there as far as how they do reporting or how culture is, that this is your time to dig in on that and try to really move the needle based on where your culture is now.
Yeah, and I think that I'll share a personal story real quick to back this up. But I think a lot of the problem that we're having is that we have it's not necessarily what's being pushed from the top. It may be perception, and perception very easily becomes reality. And I'll give you that example that I was talking about when I was in the hydroblast world. We were cleaning an oil spill up at a refinery with a pressure washer that had about 200-degree Fahrenheit water that sprayed through the steam jenny as part of it. And as I'm hydroblasting the spill, I didn't like the way it sprayed up on me. So I turned around in a little way, and I'm using this big high pressure washer to clean this up. And I go across the top of my foot, and I give myself a water cut and some probably a 2nd-degree burns. Now I tell my coworker about what happened. I said, hey, I did this. I feel like I need to report it. And this is before I got in safety. Obviously, I was still in operations. And he goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I'll tell them whatever story you want me to tell them, but you're going to get fired when they find out that you got hurt doing this. I mean, that's just as simple as that. You're going to get fired." So guess who didn't report his injury? Yep, that's right. Jason did not report his injury because Jason did not want to get fired.
Yep.
Wow, that was totally preventable, Jason. Why are you so stupid?
Exactly.
It's a safety hazard, man.
Safety, because I wasn't a very safe worker.
That was a violation.
Hey, this brings up something that we have talked about ad nauseum, although not on air before, and I think it's a good place to bring it up. I saw a post yesterday, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but I would say a mutual friend, mutual ally of all of us, although we don't agree with him at all times. But he put out a post about the idea of zero and how ridiculous it would be to say right now that, there's this virus, but we expect that we're going to have zero harm from it because we just know that that's not true. Just because of what it is. And my fear, but also at the same time, my hope is that my fear is that people won't catch the parallels between that and the ideology of zero in safety. But my hope is that they do catch that and say, well, hey, this was something very real. And the reality of it is that you cannot prevent all, but we need to do our best to minimize. And that's something that has been severely lacking because in safety, it is so much debate about all accidents are preventable. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. And we have a huge opportunity now to make a real world, real life and death comparison to something. And I'm not making light of it. It's just the reality of what it is today. But we have the opportunity to compare that to the mentality and the focus of what safety has been for so many years and start changing that based on real life right now.
So this is why I feel like I want to bang my head against the wall every day. It's this mentality. I get it now.
Yeah.
Look, Jason, if you bring it all the way back to the ranch and where that cow got out, it could have been, okay?
Hey, don't be an asshole. This is so to clue everybody in. Nate, do you want to tell everybody about your little video episode with the cow?
What?
You didn't pick that up?
You don't remember?
I don't even remember.
How like a cow got loose from some farm.
There's a cow that got out. Okay, so Nate doesn't remember.
I don't remember.
Nate posts way too much stuff on LinkedIn.
Nate has been attacking people for so long with this zero ID, he doesn't even remember.
Which one?
It's like one out of 1,000.
Which person that I pissed off? No, so I gotta tell this story from my perspective because and I'm going to keep all the names out of it for good reason. But we'll say there's a character, and we're going to call him Ford Pinto. You guys will understand why. The audience might not. But Ford Pinto is one of those safety cops, one of those old school compliance is everything. OSHA's my God, and I worship it type people, and just cannot understand or can't focus on anything if it's not the way that he thinks it is. So Ford Pinto walks into my office one day and he goes, "Your friend Nate's an asshole." And I went, "All right, that's probably true, but why?" And he said, "Well, he posted this video and he made fun of everybody that disagreed with him." So it took me hours to go back and find this video, but it was a video of a cow that got out, was roaming the streets, and this unassuming pedestrian, I'm sorry, it was a bull. I got that in the notes. This unassuming pedestrian is just walking along. I think he was, looking at his cell phone. So I'm sure that was the root cause, right? Distracted walking. And this cow just bowls him over and takes him out. And the debate was, Nate's point was, that wasn't preventable to that guy. And of course, nonsensical arguments ensued, and people were in there saying, well, if the farmer had been more responsible, the cow would have never got out. If they'd have done PMs on their fences, but somebody that I knew, obviously, in the form of this Ford Pinto guy, came in and was very distraught that you would even think to argue that wasn't preventable, which I thought was very humorous. He apologized for it later, so you guys are on good terms again, Nate. In case you were wondering.
That's good. I need to fix that then. I have more work to do, apparently.
So keep working.
So you're saying that my video of a bull caused them to have a cow, essentially.
Oh, it did.
Basically.
That's awesome.
What happened here. But that actually wasn't me. That was the beard.
Mm.
So I can't take any responsibility for that.
So, okay. So I'm getting it now. So when it's kind post, it's Nate.
That's right.
When it's let's create some chaos, it's Redbeard.
Yeah, there you go. You got me figured out.
Man, I need to grow a better beard.
I need to grow a beard.
Dr. Jekyll and his beard. That's awesome.
Well, he gets that way when I don't rub enough beef jerky on it. That's what happens, and he just takes over. And I just wake up one day. I wake up one day and I've pissed a bunch of people off on LinkedIn. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm just imagining like Nate's beard while he's sleeping. Like, put that in your head for a second. Like he's asleep and there's a top on his chest and it's just his beard.
You guys don't have to do this mental exercise.
Nathan, listen to me. I'm going to go type some stuff on LinkedIn. You stay sleeping.
Well, have you ever seen the movie Ratatouille? It's kind of like that.
Yes.
Okay, I got to watch that one.
That's a good one. You got Disney Plus now. Yeah. You got nothing better to do in quarantine. No, so I got to say, guys, this is somewhere around our 25th episode that we've recorded. And I think we're starting to see the dynamic, and I think the audience will grow with us as we do this, but this is becoming a whole lot of fun, just being in the same room and just chatting, having a good time, because I think that's what the world needs right now. We talk about a lot of serious stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of craziness going on. There's a lot of just asinine things that are happening, and we need to let loose a little bit.
Totally agree. And imagine how silly someone would sound trying to explain that cow or bull story, and then how silly their safety position is going to look after that. So like bringing that back around, I mean, we can't be chasing down these tangents and expect people to come with us and then bring us into the room when there's real business decisions to be made. It's just not possible.
Yeah. What was so funny about that whole episode was that and I think this is a perfect example of how terrible we are at communicating, just in general, because he comes in there going, "Well, your friend's a jerk." I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about, dude. Like, I'm not in your brain. Catch me up a little bit." But we do that so much. Everybody does. We think that everybody's on that same wavelength as we are, and I think that's where a lot of the misses come from.
I call it having half the conversation in my head.
Yeah.
wife and I do it all the time. We'll just throw out something random, and the other one's like, "What? Where? How? What are you talking about?" And then you think back, and you had like at least half of that conversation in your head before you even spit out the rest of it. So I think we do that at work sometimes too.
I see that happening a lot, and then making decisions based on half of the conversation. It doesn't help anybody. And then add in like the social media aspect, like we're talking about some of the LinkedIn stuff, and it's just a complete recipe for disaster. So hopefully people aren't communicating things like that and then totally regretting it after this whole thing blows over at some point, because there are potential employers and future coworkers that are watching these interactions on LinkedIn, and that's kind of scary too.
That's never stopped anybody before.
True.
I have a folder on my computer that's called "Don't Link and Drink" after the episode that we made, because there are some really kooky things that people post on LinkedIn that I can't even believe that they said that, and I'm like, I have to screenshot this and save it for posterity because they're almost certainly going to delete it later.
Screenshots live forever.
Oh yeah, that's true. Speaking of the lighter side of things, I've been having a little bit of fun looking up conspiracy theories of the coronavirus and just other weird things that are going on. And there actually are some pretty crazy things going on besides coronavirus.
Oh, yeah. I got an article sent to me the other day about, and I couldn't read it in its entirety because it was way far out there, but it was something around the lines of the coronavirus and the quarantine is just a cover up for World War III that's about to happen. And it was interesting.
I saw one about coronavirus is being caused or is linked to 5G networks. And apparently in the UK, there's people lighting cell phone towers on fire due to that conspiracy theory.
This is a popular theory. I've heard that too, but it just sounded so crazy that I didn't read anything further. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, the 5G conspiracies have been going on since before coronavirus started, but I don't know exactly how they're connecting the two, but that's a strange one.
That brings up an interesting thought. How in your all perspective, how has this changed your idea of personal security? I know this is a totally different subject, but do you feel the need to go concealed carry more often, or have more security at your house, or whatever? Anything like that pop up for you guys?
So there was a discussion in a mom group that I'm in on Facebook with friends of mine. We just don't live in the same areas anymore. And the conversation turned to like, what if there's social unrest, with all this? Like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, yeah, it'll probably happen. And then the other people got in a conversation about like having guns, and we have guns, but no bullets, and we need more guns. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have anything. I went through Taekwondo as a child, and I feel pretty confident with myself. A lot of penalty minutes when I played hockey. So I'm usually, I don't need a weapon. But
yeah, it's just Abby is the weapon. You will not be safe AF
right.
if you
you'll have to catch these.
It's not. The other part of it is it's not necessarily so much like a desire for increased security, but I'm watching shows and commercials differently. And this is just a weird thing. Like I'm watching older movies and I'm like, wow, look how close they are to one another. Or why are they like so close to one another? Oh my God, they just drank the same drink.
Well, how about the emoji of the shake my head emoji, where he puts his hand on his face? Like I can't use that anymore. I'm just like, this is just a bad influence. Yeah, you can't be touching your face, man. Come on. I can't even use the shake my head emoji anymore. It's ruined it.
Yeah, I got a magazine on, it was the National Safety Council, Safety and Health magazine. I still get it delivered to my house. And I was flipping through that, and obviously it went to print before, major lockdowns started happening all over the place. But just looking at different ads and things, like there's a completely silly ad. I don't remember what it's for, but the guy's holding up a safety cone as if it's like a telescope, and it's like on his eye. And I'm just thinking, oh, gross. So a lot of the hygiene and distance stuff is really, marketing is going to have to change, how things are pictured will have to change.
And I've been impressed by how quickly commercials have changed. There's a Domino's pizza ad where the guy from Hamilton is reenacting Risky Business, and Booger from Revenge of the Nerds in the original version of the commercial delivered his pizza and said "Time of your life," and he's like about to. And then, like, in a matter of like days of quarantine, it turned into Booger disappeared, and they just gave him an alert that his pizza was on the front stoop, and it's like, and I'm like, that was so fast.
I gotta share this. So I ordered pizza last week. We always do pizza movie night on Friday or Saturday with the kids, and I was just messing around, and on the app it says, "Would you like to have non-contact delivery?" I'm like, yeah, let's see how this works. So I figured, that's going to buy me another couple minutes. And so the doorbell rang, and my thought actually was, well, they're just going to leave it at the door. I'll go get it in a minute. So I left it for like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It was a while. And I go out there, and this delivery driver is standing at the end of my driveway with her arms folded, just glaring at me because I needed to sign the receipt and give it back to her.
Did they provide you a pair of gloves to sign it with, or
no?
Did you use your own pen?
And I didn't.
Did you?
I made it out alive
before you ate the pizza.
Contaminated.
Oh no, I licked the pen too.
We ordered pizza too, but that means that the pizza gets immediately out of the cardboard box and onto our own stuff, and the cardboard box gets thrown in the backyard for later. And any of we get dipping sauces with this one local place, and so all those were sanitized, wiped down, and it's getting ridiculous.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I had to order pizza, but going through this whole thing, it's like, is it too much? I don't know.
So you haven't physically left your house, right, Abby, in like 2 weeks?
I've physically left the house, like to drive around or like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah, like walk around. What did we do? I forget what we did. Just driving around, man. That's pretty much it. But yeah, I haven't like gone into another place, like a place of business or anything for. It's probably been like 3 weeks now. It's weird. It's definitely a weird feeling.
Weird. Why do you hate local businesses, Abby?
I do not. We've actually ordered plenty for delivery. It's just this whole like, clean it off, wipe it off, whatever game. It's like, I don't know. It's getting to be a lot.
Okay, I got to switch this up for just a minute. Has Idaho always had a bunch of earthquakes?
No. Did they have another one?
Like, okay, in one day, there, if you look at it, there's like, I don't know how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 earthquakes in Idaho on 4/5, which is today.
There have been earthquakes in a lot of places.
California has
Utah.
a bunch.
So
Utah.
the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple in Salt Lake City, it was damaged by one of the earthquakes.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, why I know why we're not hearing anything about earthquakes that are going crazy across the world, but you think there might be a mention.
You're going to have to follow the earthquake bot on Twitter. I'll set you guys up with that, because when I used to live in Southern California, I'd always, it's not cool to feel the earthquake, to say like, oh, I felt that. It's like, nah, I don't think that was anything. I think my stomach's upset or whatever. So I started following the Quake bot on Twitter, because I would have to verify, like, was that actually an earthquake? Because, the body can feel something that's like in the high 2s to low 3s. Definitely above that, you're going to feel it for sure. And you don't need Twitter verification. But I'll set you guys up with that Twitter profile.
Yeah, these aren't big earthquakes. These are like 3.1, 2.7.
No,
it's
there's
not like
some that are 5 and 6s though. There are some bigger ones.
Yeah, I know.
5 and 6.
I like looking up. I'm like, what is the latest earthquakes?
When I worked in Northern California in geothermal power, I mean, that whole area was just a hotbed for the geothermal and seismic activity and all that. So earthquakes were a daily occurrence, and we even caused them sometimes by injecting too much water back into the aquifer and it's crazy stuff. But so you get used to it after a couple of years of daily earthquakes. And I remember we had an environmental intern sitting, and his office was around the corner from mine, and we had one of those, and you could almost hear them coming because they roll, right? And so you can hear them coming and then you feel it. And we just got used to it. So we hear this one and shook the walls a little bit, and this full delay of probably a minute or so. And this kid, I think he was a junior or sophomore in college. Minute or two later, he goes, "Whoa, did you guys feel that?" We're like, "Yeah, bro."
A minute ago. My question is there a bot that tracks plagues of locusts? Have you guys heard about that? So there's a plagues of locusts in Africa. Has something to do with the fact that they aren't putting pesticides on their crops due to everything that's going on, and so there's plagues of locusts.
Huh. I had not seen that.
All of us looking it up.
Yeah.
I like that. There's just this pause, and then Abby just goes, huh.
I thought I disconnected for a second.
Oh, pause it as they're entering it into Google to see the pictures.
Right.
East Africa right now, the plague of biblical proportions.
So, I think, wow, we've gotten a lot of places today.
Yeah, wrap this up, Jason. Let's see you connect all these dots.
Let's see me do this one. Well, we talked about Zero, we talked about old people, we talked about LinkedIn, we talked about locusts and earthquakes. The world's going crazy right now. We all know it, and we all feel it. If we can bring a little bit of light and joy to your life through this podcast, we're more than happy to do that. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you again on the next episode of the Safety Justice League podcast.
You are listening to Safety Justice League podcast on Safety FM.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.